best ways to be able to get to know your bike is to be able to know the terminology about the bikes. So I thought we'd run through the frame and fork anatomy that comes through Trek University. And then there's an exam at the end of it. Just don't too much stress. Before I ride, a quick little check over of the frame and of the bike, and I just call it the ABCs. And for me, the ABCs are a quick acronym for air, brakes, and chain. When I'm looking at the bike and think I'm going to go for a ride, I can grab that front tire and I can say, oh yeah, that's pretty hard. But the challenge is that I really won't know until I actually get my gauge on there. After about 30 psi, I really can't feel the difference between that and a regular frame. So
just by hand touch?
Just by hand touch, yeah. I mean, I might step on the bike and go for a ride and say, oh man, what's going on with this? It feels really mushy. And the problem with that is that if you have a tire that's not inflated totally, when you go over something sharp, that tire will just go completely over. It won't deflect that sharp thing. It'll just absorb it, and then your risk of flat increases. The other side is that, and that's kind of one of the risks. Another risk is that if that tire is not inflated entirely and you go over a rock or something like that, that can ramp up against the rim and then you can damage the rim. So
that's important to keep that at the correct PSI.
Absolutely. Okay. And then the next question is, wait a sec, how do I know what is the correct PSI? And most of that information is embossed on the sidewall of the tire. And a lot of our tire pressures have changed. It used to be that for a road bike like this, you would say, oh, well, yeah, it should be about 100 or 120 PSI. But there's a wonderful new resource of information coming from a website called Silka. And you can put in your weight and the size of your tires and your rim size, and you can say, what's my fastest pressure? And this Silka website has told me that my fastest pressure is 60 PSI, which blows my mind because our pressure
thought it was going to be over 100.
Absolutely, yeah. And so gone are the days of these rock hard tires that are bouncy and cause a lot of fatigue and actually are not that fast. So
so whatever's written on your tire is not to be taken as gospel.
That's right. And oftentimes there'll be two numbers. One will be 80 and another will be 60. And if you haven't done the Silka website, it might mean that, okay, what's my surface that I'm riding on? If I'm riding on a paved surface, I'm going to want to go for that upper number. If I'm riding on a crushed stone surface or a gravel road, I want it to be a little softer to have more purchase on the ground, and then that's going to be probably that lower end, so 60 psi. So that's the A. The next one is the B, which is brakes, and that's pretty self-evident that really I want to just make sure that those brakes are working. Brakes are a bit of a complex system because they often involve the rotation of the wheel in some way, and then a surface to be able to put resistance on. So in this bike, my brake is a disc rotor and the caliper. And very often this will be perfect and I can't hear it, it's wonderful, but every once in a while there is a little bit of sound. And that sound is a key thing for whatever brake system you're using. So for me to test my brakes, I need to get it spinning, and then I need to listen, wait, is it spinning freely? And if it is, no problem. And then just grabbing that brake and assuring that it does brake without noise. Now there's certain noises depending on the trim level of the brakes that are to be expected, but most times they're pretty quiet. But we have seen that some of the disc brakes now are getting sometimes they're vulnerable to contamination, which means there's a little bit of oil on there and it will screech like a banshee. The most awful sound you can imagine. And initially the sound is worse than the effect. You still have braking power, but the sound is there. And little by little, that sound continues and gets worse, and the braking goes completely out the window. And it's pretty disturbing to be grabbing a fistful of brake and hearing this wail of the sound and have nothing happen.
Nothing's happening.
Yeah. So
Right.
yeah, that's good indication that when things are wrong with a bike, it will tell you. It will chirp. It'll make noise. So so that's so air, brakes, and then chain. And moving it through the gears properly. And just by properly, I'm hoping that it's not chucking or making some bumps. And that would be the first thing that I would be checking. Next, I'm looking at the chain to see if it's fairly clean. And this is a little embarrassing, but here we go. Oh my gosh, look at this. Filthy chain, really.
Is that not just oil, or is that actual
So
dirt?
I went for a big ride last night, and I knew it was going to rain, so I put some wet lube on the bike. And when I put a lubricant on the bike chain, I put it on, and then I take off the excess, and then that should take care of most of it. The thing is, it did rain quite a bit, and so that water got onto the chain, a lot of road grit got onto the chain, and so that's still there. So I really need to put this through a chain pig and clean this thing off. And
It's
then
a chain cleaner.
a chain cleaner device, yeah. And so I would use a degreaser fluid to be able to take off that mucky external stuff, and probably even take my cassette off, give that a good clean, and then I'd reapply lubricant for the sort of conditions that I'm going out in. And for me on this bike, I'm putting lube on probably every 100 kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
But Pete wants a clean bike is a fast bike, and he wants to ride fast. So cleaning his cassette every time by removing it is not really necessary for everyone.
Oh, okay.
So just putting a spray, like a chain cleaning spray, and then having your little brushes, just doing a quick one is good for us everyday riders.
Oh, okay.
But it is something that you want to watch for is the accumulation of little bits of sand or grit, and that's when you want to make sure that it's you're causing more trouble along the term.
the next thing I wanted to talk about is good pain and bad pain when we're riding our bikes.
Oh, okay.
So, there's certain sort of pain to be expected, which is that you're working hard, you're going up a hill, maybe your legs aren't as strong as you would like them to be, but that's pretty short-lived. Like if you're finding that difficult, then you can hop off the bike and be able to say, whew, that was a big workout, I'm good. But where there's extended pain, where people are experiencing lots of tension in their hands, if their seat is prolonged pain, certainly in the beginning of the season, I'll go through a 2 or 3 ride period where I'm experiencing some lingering tenderness because of that new saddle.
Right.
But as it gets into the season, now we're into July, and if I go out for a 70-kilometer ride tonight, I can be back on the saddle tomorrow, and I'm not going to feel it. It's going to be pretty
So
comfortable.
you get conditioned the more you're doing
Absolutely.
it.
Now, all of that is going to be mitigated by the proper equipment. If I'm wearing a pair of cycling shorts, that's going to help quite a bit.
Right.
If my seat height is the correct height, that's important. What's bad pain is things like knee pain, or if people are experiencing pain in their back or pain between their shoulder blades. And that really points to how the bike is set up, or whether the bike is even the correct size. So
Or correct configuration,
true.
for sure. And the other one that a lot of people are foot cramping and numbness
Oh, really?
is something that can be addressed as
Oh,
well.
okay.
But that's usually the case of it not being the right fit.
The right fit, yeah. Because when I got my husband's bike, well, I didn't get it. I took it, and it was my neck, because I was just like so far forward. So getting the handlebars brought back made the difference for me. Big time, yeah. And I got the cycling shorts with the padding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant example. And, our European colleagues have created very comfortable, very upright positioning on bikes. That's wonderful. Great head and shoulders mobility. Now, those bikes are challenged to be the fastest bikes.
Can't get it
maybe?
all.
You
Yeah.
can't get it all. That's right. There are
Yeah.
costs to everything. So costs
Right.
and benefits.
Mhm.
So, but we're finding that a lot of people are coming into our shop after they've had a certain amount of riding. You know, when you're 18 to 42, you're awesome on a bike. You can be in a leaned over position until the day is long. But it seems like after we get into our 40s, neck and shoulders start becoming a little stiff. Sometimes bearing a lot of weight on our hands is difficult. So paying attention to kind of the where you are in life as well is really important. That
Right.
maybe that bike that you had when you were 20 is not going to be the bike
It's
that
not the
you
right one now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And bike styles have changed a lot. You know, back in the day, like in the 80s, everybody wanted those really aggressive mountain bikes that you would lean over, and they weren't even comfortable back then, but they were
Right.
nice looking and you know, they served a purpose. And now it's just like, well, we're not really doing that kind of riding anymore, and there are
Right.
better choices now.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
one of the things that you were talking about, like some of the clothing choices, you know, cycling shorts, that's brilliant. We find that gloves are really important. We found, and in fact I've got one on my bike, there's little mirrors that you can have on the frame so that rather than twisting and turning your neck in a really awkward way, and you know, as you turn your upper body, the hands and the handlebars
Right.
follow.
Right.
So having some sort of mirror on the bike is really important.
That's a good one. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, technology is helping an awful lot as well. A lot of people are using now a product called a Varia that's got a little radar setup, and so you can turn on the radar. It looks like a blinky red light, but it's actually a radar, so you're actually able to see if cars are coming up quickly behind you or where your other teammates are if they're around you on the bike. So
Okay.
it's really ideal. And then I think just one of the most important technology advances for me to be comfortable on the bike is these guys. And so just these blinky red lights have created so much confidence when I'm riding that I know that people can see me from a long distance off. And it used to be the case that people would come up pretty aggressively behind me and lay on the horn. Now with these lights, I'm sure they see me 2 kilometers back, and they get a sense, okay, cyclist, and they give me lots of space. Or as we're summiting a hill at the same time, they hold back and they don't try to pass me on the narrows. So yeah, I mean, this for me is probably one of the biggest game changers I've seen.
And is that battery operated?
It's a USB charge, so
Okay.
you just plug it
Plug
in
it
just
in
the
at
same
night,
way on your
whatever,
cell
yeah.
phone. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I gotta get myself one.